Greetings, it's New Zealand naturopath Eric Bakker, author of Candida Crusher, and I'm the formulator of the CanXida range of products. Thank you for checking out my video. I do appreciate it very much. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. I love doing these videos, particularly for subscribers who come back and keep watching my videos. We've been doing a few videos on SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. This video is going to be about the best foods. You may have seen my previous one about the best diet, where I basically said, look, there is no best diet, okay, because you need to really understand that the best diet is the foods that you tolerate the most. Well, now in this video, we're going to go a little bit deeper into foods which I believe are the better kind of foods for people with SIBO. The better kind of foods are the foods that don't react with your gut. And if you're unsure, the golden rule is start small, take it gradually up. Don't eat too much of food in one sitting. Modify that kind of starch. If it's a starch you're worried about, as I mentioned in the other video, modify it with heat to see if you can tolerate it. Bake it or perhaps steam it, broil it or steam it. Throw the microwave in the bin. I'm not really a big fan of microwave. So try that out first. So focus really on high quality proteins. Paleo kind of approaches are the ones I've always favored for a long time. Just basically good quality proteins. It doesn't have to be meat if you're vegan, you know. But again, even more if you're vegan, you need to be very careful, of course, about these kind of carbohydrates that you do eat, because the proteins, obviously, if you're not a vegan, are meats. But proteins, if you're vegan, are going to be things like chickpeas and lentils and nuts and seeds and various other things like that. And they have got high potential for causing issues if you've got a lot of bad bacteria there in the gut. So you need to become a good food detective to work out what are the best foods for you. Nuts, I'd be a little bit cautious of too. So the first question comes to mind is, if you've got SIBO, do you have food allergies? Do you react to food? I've done a previous video on the difference between food allergies and food intolerances. You need to watch that one if you want to know the difference. There's a big difference between them both. Many people with SIBO benefit from digestive enzymes. This will help to reduce fermentation a lot and allow more scope when it comes to different foods in the diet. So what type of grains would be the best grains? Because this is a question everybody asks me. Are oats okay? Is quinoa okay? I think rolled oats is usually perfectly fine. If it's cooked with just plain water, clean water, it's usually well tolerated. Don't make the mistake of putting lots of honey or maple syrup on a porridge, because that can cause a lot of fermentation and bloating and gas as well. If you're going to do rolled oats, in my opinion, do it all by itself in the morning, away from fruits or anything else. Just have a small portion and see how you go with that. You may also feel like a millet porridge instead, or buckwheat. These things all make quite good porridge. Be careful of flours when your gut is quite sensitive and tender. Many people try and bake all these kinds of fancy breads and end up with a lot of problems. So the more simple you keep the diet, the less chance you're going to have aggravation. Some of the most successful cases I've seen were people were eating lamb and pears and avocado. Crazy? Crazy. In my mind, a bit crazy, but I've had a few patients who eat 3 or 4 foods for 2 weeks to see how the gut goes, and often it will settle right down. You don't need to make the diet complicated. Quinoa is a very good grain. I really like quinoa cooked in a chicken stock. If you're vegan, you know that's not going to happen, but cooked in chicken stock is a beautiful way to eat quinoa. Amaranth and quinoa are both sort of similar kind of grains. They're quite nice. Chia seeds, buckwheat, all unusual kinds of grains. You need to experiment with these kinds of grains. Look up some recipes. They're well worthwhile going for. What about rice? Well, as I've mentioned in another video, I think that wild rice and brown rice combination is very good. Again, small amounts. You may want to start with a tablespoon per day. See how you go. Most of the proteins fare quite well with meat proteins fare well with SIBO, especially fresh fish, white fillets. Lamb. Lamb's one of the least reactive of all protein foods I know. I've never really found people with lamb allergies. I found few egg allergies, but not lamb. If you can't tolerate cow's milk and have a strong dairy allergy, and you've got a bad bowel problem, especially diarrhea, you want to avoid beef completely, at least for several months, 3 months. Beef is obviously bovine and will contain the beta-casein protein that could react with your gut. So lamb, Eggs, free-range eggs, fresh fish, good quality proteins. If you're hungry, increase your protein intake. Snacking between meals is okay, and a high-fat snack is going to help you a lot with SIBO, control sugar cravings too. I find half an avocado to be quite a good snack. 3 or 4 Brazil nuts and half an avocado is a good snack. Or it could be a small amount of salmon, red salmon, tinned red salmon. Tinned fish, am I averse to it? No, I'm not, especially if it's a wild-caught fish like red salmon. There are certain salmon species they can't really keep in fish ponds or in fish farms, and I believe red salmon is one of those. So I also like sardines, water-packed sardines. They're one of my favourite snack foods to eat, high in omega-3. So what kind of foods again? Well, we talked about the proteins a bit, we talked about the starches. Be very careful with the fruits. This is a question many people have. What fruits can I have with SIBO? Most people, in my opinion, with SIBO, if it's bad, have leaky gut syndrome. Leaky gut syndrome means you're going to react to different kinds of foods quite strongly in an immune sense. You're probably going to have a problem with your secretory IgA in the gut. The key fruits to avoid are bananas and oranges. Be careful of those two. What are the better fruits for SIBO? I always find avocado to be tolerable with most people. I find generally a kiwi fruit, 1 kiwi per day, to be usually okay. Most of the berries are fine. Blueberries, raspberries. Blueberries are probably the most tolerated of all berries, but most berries are certainly worth trying. I find pomegranate to be okay with most people, and also coconut, of course, being a fruit, really, nut. Well, you can't really call it a fruit, but I find coconut to be very well tolerated. I've had quite a few comments on YouTube of people saying how better they felt when they were drinking coconut, the juice from 1 green coconut per day. It can have a very beneficial effect on improving SIBO, so it's certainly worth a try. You've got scope for a large range of foods with SIBO, a large range. Don't forego the antibacterial, antimicrobial foods with SIBO. I've done some videos on this. If you're in the US right now, you're going into summertime, spring, so plant plenty of herbs like oregano and thyme and marjoram, rosemary and basil. These herbs contain lots of phenols, various kinds of phenols or chemicals like thymol and carvacrol, like we find in oregano, so these are very antimicrobial. We've got fall, autumn coming up now into spring, so I'll be planting a whole lot of garlic to grow over the colder months, so I eat lots of garlic in my diet. Garlic's extremely antimicrobial food, and it's usually generally well tolerated with SIBO. Start with a slice if you're worried, and then gradually build up. Clove, the spice called cloves, and also cinnamon, good to put in with rice and different dishes if you're cooking them. If you're cooking protein foods, often these spices fare quite well in them as well. So as you can see, there's a lot of things you can eat. So don't be afraid to experiment. Experimentation is the most important thing to do with SIBO. As your gut improves, the key thing to look at every day is the bowel motions. You should have a good texture of the motion, good colour, not bad odour. And generally, if you've got good bowel motions, you can experiment a bit more and a bit more with different kinds of foods. Remember also the starches we've spoken about. You can modify the starches by heating them in different ways, because that will change the tolerability on them. Baking or steaming can sometimes change something like pumpkin from totally intolerable to reasonably tolerable. So give that a go. So I hope that's a bit of information for you on some foods for SIBO. Last thing I'll leave you with is fermented and cultured foods. I make my own sauerkraut. I find it to be a fantastic food for SIBO patients. If you can't tolerate sauerkraut, maybe start with the juice of sauerkraut. Even just a teaspoon of the juice per day in a bit of water to get that lactic acid in the body, and also that juice that sits on top of the yogurt, that white sort of juice. 10, 15, 20 drops in a small amount of water. It's going to give you a lot of lactic acid. It's going to help to build up the bacteria in the small bowel. Good thing to do with SIBO. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to click on the link below to get your free Candida report. Thank you.